Let the church say amen. A 21st century religion, part 3. So what about Jesus? As we continue this series, I'll just briefly review parts 1 and 2. In our first part, we talked generally about the development of religious ideas in human history and human culture. We talked about how religion got started from the cave paintings of the Neolithic human beings to the most elaborate systems of religion that we find around the globe today. We just took a glimpse at how religion has developed. And it's clear from the historical record that religion hasn't always been what it is at this moment. So as we discover how it has grown, developed, and evolved, we understand more about religion and more about ourselves. As we looked at this history, we were taking note that within these systems of religion, ideas about gods, little g, plural s, ideas about gods and ideas about God, big G, no s, developed along with the evolution of human thought, growth, and civilization. Now, I didn't say God is a subject of evolution. I said our thoughts of God have evolved. We can look at a perfect example of that in Psalm 124. One could not sing a psalm of national deliverance until the nation state had been established. The lone hunter or gatherer does not sing, "God is on our side." By understanding the development of religious ideas into religious practices and into religions themselves, we saw how, in a fashion, human beings created God in our own image by the ways in which we think about God. The first depictions of God by human beings were animalistic because these animals ruled our lives. They ruled our lives by their overwhelming capacity to kill us. They ruled our lives by their capacity to elude our capture and therefore our eating. And should we fail in the hunt, we and our family would die. And so the first ideas about gods were associated with the variety of animals that human beings encountered in the world in which they lived. Now, as humans developed tools and weapons and snares and tricks and began to outthink their animal adversaries, as humans became more dominant and animals became less wild and more domesticated, then the gods that they represented became more humanistic. They were only, instead of being fully animal, they were human beings with an animal head, or a human head on an animal body. And you can trace this evolution of human religious thought all the way across the ages until, finally, as the thoughts of the human mind became more sophisticated, more pure. And this was particularly advanced by Plato. In fact, one philosopher calls Catholicism Plato for the masses. It was understood then by human beings that all images of the gods or of God are, back up, all images generally, all things, all depictions of things are at their very best poor reflections of the real. Plato talked about the actual being invisible and somewhere up there. And as we draw them and as they exist in this plane of reality, they are but compromised, poor reflections of the real thing. So there is the apple that we eat, and there's the real apple in the sky that is perfect in every way, with no flaws. There is also the gods that we see and worship in the temples of Greece and other parts of the world, and then there is the pure and perfect God that is invisible somewhere up there. So it became, for the most civilized of human beings, the only way to represent the notion of a singular, perfect, all-powerful, big G God was by refraining from having any image or representation at all. And the idea of God, which, as Cupid told us before, if you ask someone in Athens, where is God? They say, oh, right over there in the temple. And you could go to any of those religious temples in that ancient Near East world, and you'd find gods all over the place. There was no mystery. But suddenly God disappeared and became invisible to the human eye, but not to the human mind. So understanding the process of religious ideas, thoughts, and systems, we began to explore 21st century ideas about the non-real God, the non-reality of God. Now note well, non-reality is not the same as non-existence. But for those committed to the BGITS, that's the big guy in the sky, they will find little comfort in that distinction. If you want more about that, go and listen to the tape from part 1 and 2. So today we come to part 3. So what about Jesus? What about Jesus? We stand here as members of a Christian church. How do we understand Jesus in the light of a 21st century religion? A religion that makes sense, a religion to which we can fully commit our mind, soul, and body. What do we do with Jesus? Now, it's strange, but with Jesus, we have just the opposite from the problem that we have with God. You see, with God, we took a non-real God and made it real. With Jesus, we took a real Jesus and made him non-real.